Chapter 1 Band Dog. Synopsis: A man has a mysterious disease. He is changing, morphing into a cryptid creature, and perhaps something not seen in hundreds of years. Setting: Year 2240 AD, Hebrew year 6000. The 9th day of the 10 days of awe. Morning of day 0, 7 days remaining. The hospital ward of the institution in Artopia. Perspective: Band Dog. Put your legs up, loosen your tie, pour yourself a cool, refreshing glass of isoplatalic acid, and light up your favorite e-cigar. You're in for a real treat. There is no place on earth like Artopia. Here, the infinity mirror grass is always neon green, and the telescreen sky dome always static-free, said a man on the television. Artopia appeared panoramic style in the hospital room through 3D tech. The sky dome around the city broadcasted vast rolling hills and a bright, clear sky that illuminated the city just like a real sky would, but better. "Ah, no, please," screamed a dog boy soldier tied onto a gurney. He was still in his ACUs, so a nurse whose name tag read Joy cut down the digital camo. As a hazel-eyed youth protested, she removed the clothes, carefully folded them, and placed them in a hamper as per protocol. She wore a clinical mask, nurse's cap, gloves, and a white apron over a uniform of pink shea fur. Joy turned up the volume of the 3D television to cover up the boy's sobs. The relaxing jazz of a cat-like black man filled the room as a nurse assisted the doctor and his operations on the GI. The television announcer continued his pitch. Mere words cannot describe the building that represents all Artopia. The institution has a style unsurpassed by all mankind's achievements. As a special surprise, we have resurrected through cloning tech the very king of jazz himself, Louis Armstrong, so that he can serenade you in sweet ragtime to open your mind further as we give you this up-to-date sneak peek. "Please," screamed the hazel-eyed youth, moments away from surgery. "I have done nothing wrong. Why are you doing this to me?" The boy was confused, because he had come to the hospital with just a minor injury. A doctor had given him a routine injection of something, he wasn't sure what, and the next thing he knew he woke up tied to a gurney. A sign hanging on the wall read, "Heroes recoup here," in big, colorful camo letters. "Don't be silly," the nurse giggled. She held up a copy of the contract he had signed. "See this part, where you swore your life to protect and serve your country? Well, that is what you're doing right now. Thank you for your service." She smiled appreciatively. The soldiers assumed it was they that represented the might of the Artopian military, but it was really the nurses and doctors that formed the head of the military parade, for it was the healthcare personnel that truly implemented the desires of medical tyranny. The soldier screamed as the doctor injected another serum into his arm. The nurse put the Sleepy Sweet Dreams gas mask on him as per protocol and nodded, happy with another job well done. She knew that when he died, he would be credited with some fabricated story of valor, a great battle won, and a random number of enemy monsters he killed, which made it all okay. The new serum tested on him will go on to save many lives and do greater things than a soldier ever could, but the public hardly cared about stuff like that. They needed tales of wars and battles to keep them happy. Joy pressed down on the boy's trachea to finish the job. She hated this part, so she turned her head to the TV and hummed along to the catchy tune. She wasn't a bad person. She didn't have to be. Moral, law-abiding people kill and torture people all the time, if told to do so by an authoritative figure, and especially if it is in the protocols. Close your eyes and sleep. Ignore all the burdens that you keep. Come whatever may, they could never harm you anyway. Stirrings in the wind resonate a whisper from within. Warnings from afar telling you to heed the morning star. A red sun reflected off the Artopian skyline as it floated in the room. The sky dome was so immense it could easily contain all of what was once New York City. The institution towered over all the other buildings and reached up to the very top of the sky dome. The effect was that the sky dome looked like a giant slitted reptilian eye, the institution forming the pupil. The tower had a twisted hexagon spiraling base, so that its edges always formed 6 isosceles triangles. At the bottom of the tower, 6 large arches encircled the building. Man has traveled to every planet in the universe, manufactured and planted humanity's desires and wishes into reality, wiped out all diseases through gene farm, achieved miracles in every field of human endeavor, but the pinnacle of man's success is certain, the institution. You simply cannot live without the psychotropics, the desensitizing programs, mandated inoculations, vaccines, antibiotics, and field gene splicing. May you all have a happy, stimulating day. The TV shut itself off. When she finished, Joy left the room to tend other veterans and soldiers on the unit. After going on tour, all soldiers needed to be sterilized and decontaminated from the chemical weapons they used to destroy the enemy. Joy knew that if she did her job well, she would be given a test tube son. She'd order one that would serve as a soldier in the Artopian army. Soldiers made for the best-looking sons. She would name him either Saran or Phosgene. It did not matter that she just saw a soldier medically experimented on and killed. She was special and unique, and like every other Artopian, and therefore no such things could ever happen to her or her prodigy. Joy shuddered when she thought of her last patient, Bandog. Bandog was beginning to resemble some mythological beast without the benefit of conditioning, with features belonging to no known animal, but instead something void and uncanny, something like a werewolf. The hair on his head had grown wild and untamed, unusual, as all Artopians had short hair the same length as their fur. She hesitated before unlocking the heavy, windowless door of the Bandog's room. He was chained and kept in solitary, since the mutations could turn him into a bloodthirsty monster at any moment. Through the door, Joy heard him rambling on to himself about conspiracies and military cover-ups again. Obsession with conspiracy theories always accompanies mutation. Bandog was once one of the highest-ranking generals in the military, but he threw it all away by failing to condition.
Bill Stargates, Stephen Hawked, Bill Lies, Killery, they're all robots. Robots, I tell you.
Her hand trembled as she opened the door. Bandog lay on his bed, a heavy chain around his neck. It kept him from leaping up and attacking her as she placed a food tray on the table.
You're not taking my rectal temperature today,
he growled.
It is the protocol for every patient to receive the accurate internal.
You'd throw a baby out of a window if it was written in the damn protocol.
The nurse huffed and left the room. Like so many other patients, the hospital became Bandog's prison, except it was worse than a prison. Prisons had things like court cases and sentences. Hospitals can keep you or one of your children, family members in prison indefinitely at the whim of any doctor or nurse. When the state controls the diagnosis and treatment of disorders, medical tyranny increases, and submission to the prescribed protocols become mandatory under the threat of imprisonment or worse. There are few things more dangerous than a government program designed to help you. Around Bandog's wrist hung a red-corded bracelet. The original was taken by the doctors long ago, but every time it was, he'd make a new one by ripping up fabrics. Bandog looked at his food tray and picked out the hidden medication capsules and took a bite of the GMO McChick. Disoriented, he left the dish to grow cold. In only a matter of weeks, his mutations utterly changed his appearance. The transformations caused terrible pain, but he endured them for the sake of the truth. Bandog wanted to know if he had done the right thing killing and forcing treatment on those who refused Artopian medicine. If his refusal to condition caused him to become a psychotic killing machine, his past actions would be justified. If he did not turn into a bloodthirsty animal, that would mean he had killed innocent people. The scientists allowed him to live so they could observe his mutations. He was changing faster than anyone they had ever seen before, in ways seen and unseen. Strangely, the faces of the undergrounders he had killed now kept him company. Sometimes they told him things, crazy conspiracies, but he listened anyway. He allowed his brain to reveal to him suppressed memories long lost and buried. What was once chaos was slowly becoming reorganized and comprehended through hindsight. He refused sedation. Sobriety was dragging something out of the murk, something reeking and covered in mud but alive. The thing he knew was himself, his true self. As he remembered, his body dismembered, mutated, and grew. He cried out in agony as his wolfy jaws sunk back into his face, and his pointed ears shrunk and moved lower above his jowls. Epiphanies and realizations came with his new form as his body changed, mutated, and grew. into something not seen for hundreds of years. Things that once didn't matter suddenly did. He thought of his family. He remembered when Sagita, one of the girls he'd seen, told him she was pregnant. He had laughed, thinking she was making some crude joke. When her body began to transform, he had been horrified. She changed like one of the disfigured savages and became as unfamiliar as his own body had now become. Natural conception was incredibly rare in Artopia. Usually it took 30 or 40 artificially inseminated zygotes until the labs found one without defects. Sagita was allowed to keep the child because no defects were detected, but this had been a mistake. The baby, who Sagita named Kitty, came out all wrong. She never learned to speak. The doctor said the radiation and biochemical weapons he used in war triggered a disorder in such a way it had not been detected. Failing to detect disorders was a risk of naturally conceived children. Luckily, the institution could fix anything and anyone. Iskander took the girl when she was 3 years old and gave her back a week later, cured. At first, all she could do was repeat sentences and sounds, albeit disturbingly accurately, but soon she was talking like a typical 3-year-old. His responsibility as a parent thus completed, he washed his hands of them. Sagita was not satisfied. Like all elite members, she'd been engineered with higher executive functioning, but this came with a risk. A higher ability to rationalize means a higher incidence of self-delusion. She became convinced that the child she received back was not her original. The last he heard, Sagita moved herself and the girl from the central city of Artopia to a small town named Edron, known for radical beliefs. She took the child out of school, and both stopped conditioning. He knew she was doing it despite him. It was his job to enforce mandatory conditioning. Not to condition was suicide. The radiation could kill an unprotected person in a matter of years, or worse, turn them into rabid monsters. That is what they had been told. That is what he had believed. That is why he was understanding when he was informed his child and Sagita were euthanized. The report said that they turned into monsters and had to be humanely dispatched. He had euthanized many people, non-Artopians, and sometimes even Artopians because of their non-compliance. Artopia did its best to try and save the enemy by offering them health care and education, but it was not Artopia's fault if they refused. The only alternative was to destroy them, for by refusing medical help, they not only endangered themselves, but posed a deadly threat to anyone around them. Artopia was making the world a better place. At one time, he was a national hero, loved by everyone. Bandog looked out his small porthole window and caught his reflection in the glass. His face was contorted, his hair long, and fur sparse and leprosy-like. The rain pelted the window. When it rained, the sky dome was open to allow water in for the gardens. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of rainbow light through the sky dome's vents. The rains were so intense, white petals were ripped from their stems and cascaded across the lawn. Sensing the rising pressure, the sky dome closed itself and projected a beautiful summer day, although there had not been a real sunny day in hundreds of years. Like the sky dome, his fame and success masked a terrible truth. He had been suspecting it for a long time. The monsters were not a result of human mutation, but created from Artopian technology. Non-Artopians looked and acted different, often very sick, but the true mutants came from the weapons used to sicken and kill off the enemy. The survivors would develop strange elements and often turn into bloodthirsty, mindless monsters that everyone feared. Iskander informed him that his wife and child had spread their diseases to the rest of the town. To quarantine the outbreak, Iskander sent him and his troops to sanitize everything. They were the cleaning crew. Iskander gave him strange new weapons to do the job. There was something alien and dark about the new technology. Luckily, most of the townspeople did not survive the wringing agony stage of gestation. The humans and animals that did not die formed the Ersatz-Seer. It was a beast more than shadow than flesh, created by twisted antimatter. The abomination caused chaos for weeks before Iskander found a way to control it. Eventually, the Ersatz was confined to the desert, where it kept the monsters in the mountains from invading Artopia, and all the illegal underground people hiding in their holes. Occasionally, it would sneak into Artopia and kill an Artopian or two before disappearing. Still, the damage it caused was far less than what the monsters and undergrounders once did. Iskander claimed Edoron created the Erzat-Zir, which is why they had to be destroyed. Bandog was honored as a righteous avenger of justice. He continued his career as a cherished, respected, and high-ranking general. Life was good, but then something happened that made him question everything he believed in. He first caught his mutations from a little girl in the town of Niam. Her name was Tosh, an irksome creature. Her fur was ash-colored, but tufts of orange showed in the spots that the mutations hadn't mangled. Bandog's vision used to be black and white, a common trait among all high-ranking military men. He'd been bred to do his job well. But since the mutations, colors began to appear. Bright colors, like yellow, orange, and red. He wondered if his family saw the same colors before they died. He was following the same disease progression as them. He was so close to full revelation. He fed the mutations with his memories. Apocalypse is a word that means revelation, and he had no other road. 10 years ago, he was ordered to destroy Niam. Sometimes, a country must sacrifice parts of itself for the survival of the whole. Artopia needed Niam's resources to finish the construction of the institution. The Artopians in the central city would not mourn the destruction of a town if it meant the institution would be finished sooner. Tosh was just 6 years old, the same age his child would have been if she hadn't been killed. Somehow, Tosh survived the destruction of Edoron and found her way to Niam. There was a reason why Iskander mandated a take no prisoners, scorched earth policy for every town destroyed. Like the survivors of other towns, Tosh rambled on about conspiracies, refused to condition, and was irrational. She was dying from disease. Still, he wanted to save her before Niam burned, for she reminded him of his daughter. Perhaps wishing to save such a hopeless case was the first indication he had been infected. But was it a disease? He could feel whatever it was welling up inside his bones. Over the past couple of weeks, this strange new energy caused him to tear at his chains until his claws fell off, and then gash at them until his incisors broke and became blunt. He watched as his features swirled and became strange and foreign, but somehow he knew the truth was established in his mind. He was not turning into a mutant. He had once been a monster, but not anymore. He was turning into what humans were supposed to be, not a sapient animal, but something much, much more.